What's good, guys? It's TSG. In today's video, we have another nominee for the Illuminati Council, NewToItAll. How's it going, man?
Yeah, really good. Thanks, mate. Thanks for taking the time to ask me to come on. Much appreciated.
Nah, all good, man. Thank you for actually accepting, because you don't have to, so thank you for that. um, yeah, so let's not waste any time. Let's just jump straight into it, man. The first question I wanted to ask you is, I'm not sure if you've seen this discussion happening in the governance channel. It's a discussion that's been happening for a long time. But what are your thoughts on the duration of the epoch? Currently, it's 3 months. There's always been a discussion for extending it. Where do you stand on that? And just your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I remember seeing this. I think it was last election as well.
Yeah.
And, there was some good discussion points there. And it's a tough one because, when I go through and look at it myself, I think, firstly, what is it that people are trying to accomplish when they get onto the council? And is that something that is somehow time limited? Like a lot of the time you look at the term limits or the election times and so forth for different countries, and they all talk about how long they're going to be in power for and what they can achieve, and sometimes they use that as an excuse of I can't make these big changes needed for the betterment of my country or my community if I'm not in power for long enough. And I don't think that applies to governance for Illuvium, because I don't at the moment I don't see the council going through and proposing big changes or trying to put in these massive systems and processes that are going to go through and determine Illuvium for the next couple of years. That's not what's happening.
Yeah.
At the moment, council seems to be just about solving these problems that pop up, voting in the best interest of the community. So do you think that that's going to change, whether it's 3 months, 6 months, 12 months? I don't see that it would.
Yeah.
I mean, if so personally, I go through and look at it, what's convenient for the community.
Yeah.
Does the community want to be wasting their time with the campaigning, with the discussions and all that sort of shit on a regular basis, like every 3 months? Or would they prefer to do it, every 6 months? That way it's not, like they might actually get behind it a little bit more if it's less regular. They might think, oh, we can only vote now for the next 6 months, so let's actually make an effort. Whereas, well, if you fuck it up this time, we'll just vote somebody else in 3 months' time.
Yeah.
So look, that's what I see at the moment. That it's all about the community convenience factor. You go through and if the community feels like it's just oh, we just had one recently, do we need to do this again?
Yeah.
Well, that would be the reason to go through and change it. Otherwise, I don't see the need.
Yeah. And it's hard for you to answer this question personally, but what do you think the consensus is? And this is an assumption because we don't really have data for this. But what is your assumption of the consensus of what the community consensus right now? Do you think that the community thinks that 3 months is too often for convenience sake? What do you think the feelings are there?
Look, I think that it's not an isolated question. You need to go through and look at the other things that are being asked about council, which is, should there be 7 members?
Yeah.
So that you can go through and make sure that you've got 2 members from the Illuvium main core team to go through and provide the info, and then you've also got enough seats spare for perhaps guild representatives and so on. And then also people talking about, well, how much power should the council have, and should they go through and be, being able to dictate, larger decisions regarding the actual game and such.
Yeah.
As well as, should maybe it be a rotating cycle that not every epoch somebody gets voted out. It's like, you're in there for 2 epochs, and then you take turns as to who's now up for re-election, like they do in a lot of corporate settings.
Yep.
So look, I don't think the time is an isolated question answer type thing. I think that the community wants this to become a much broader subject and go through and look at the council governance as a whole.
Yep.
And part of that would be, how long should somebody be in for?
Yeah.
So I know that doesn't answer your question.
No, but that's super well thought out. It's not just going head on. It's actually looking at the bigger picture, which I think is super dope. All right, cool. Let's move on to the next question though, man. So we're going to have the land sale coming up June 2nd, and that's going to be the first real big example of revenue distribution and having that distributed back to stakeholders. If it was up to you, how would you like to see that distributed? Would you like to see it distributed in a lump sum? Would you like to see it distributed over time? How long? And what are your thoughts and reasons behind your perspective on that?
So I would like it to be distributed on a monthly basis, calculated on a daily basis, but for the amount to be spread over 6 months.
6 months.
Okay. So yeah. So if you go through and you get $120 million from the land sale, you go through and divide that over the 6 months. So you're looking at, 20 mil. And then you go through and say, okay, we're gonna go through and do this because you still got to go through and do it through the balancer pools or whatever exchanges and such, so that people aren't front running it and so forth. And it's all done algorithmically, random timings and such, so people can't see when it's happening, how it's happening. Yeah. But it just gets split up into these smaller amounts to spread it over, and it's a daily thing.
Yeah.
And if you're doing a snapshot to go through and see, okay, these are the people's wallets or it's staked at this time. And so it's accumulating and sort of crediting it to them on a daily basis, but it only gets paid to them on a monthly basis.
Yep.
Just to try and sort of like simplify it and have less gas transactions and so forth.
Yeah.
But the idea with splitting it over 6 months is when you go through and you look at the revenue distribution for land as an isolated thing, it's easy to go through and say, oh, we should just put just this one large lump sum payment, you put it in and you get paid for that. And people will go and buy and sell the tokens based on knowing that that's coming through.
Yeah.
But when you go through and start looking at the longer term picture and a much wider business sense of what Illuvium will be. So let's look at the fact that you're going to go through and have hopefully $100 million worth of fuel purchases or market transactions coming through, and then how does that get distributed and so forth. So, and if all of these things are all working on a 6 month timer where whatever comes in on each day gets split up and spread out over 6 months, it sort of gets evenly distributed over that 6 month period. You're still going to get peaks when you've had a bigger day or a weekend or a monthly event, and then that starts to spike and so on, and they build up. And then you also got the other outside events, such as Netflix comes in and says, we're going to go through and give you $200 million as a deal. How does that fit into it?
Yeah.
So by spreading it over 6 months, you've gone through and just you've still allowed that it's getting it within a relatively good time frame. And because people are getting it calculated on a daily basis and paid on a monthly basis, they're not waiting like, oh, I have to wait 6 months to receive it, like the staking lockup.
Yeah.
It goes through and just spreads it out a little bit more evenly. And so people can go through and still calculate it, but not front run it.
Yeah.
And I think that that's fair from an investment perspective.
Yeah. And what's your perspective on, so for example, say we do take that 6 month period.
Yes.
So for example, let's use the land sale as an example. So the land sale happens June 2nd for the 3 days, and then it gets spread out over 6 months. What happens to the revenue for people that come in and they're not staked now, but for example, they stake next month? Will they still get a share of the revenue generated from this land sale? Because it is going to be put out over time.
Yeah, because if you go through and sort of say that no, those people aren't eligible for it, then you also have to go through and do the flip side, where if somebody goes through and sells their tokens early, so that the staking has finished and it's unlocked and they sell, but there's still a remaining 4 months of payment period, should they continue to receive that payment coming to them?
Yeah.
No.
Of course, yeah.
And so when you've gone through and it's spread out over that 6 months, then the smarter investor is going to be able to go through and calculate that. They're going to go through and be able to see, okay, this is the amount of money that's come into the Illuvium system, and it's going through and being spread out over this period of time. And so that helps them to know. I mean, it's almost like calculating like dividends. Like at least you know that this is the minimum payment that I'm going to receive over the next 6 months. And if there's any others that jump in there, it's going to get split over 6 months, and then a portion of that paid into the near term. And it also means, and this is the part that I personally like, is that if people want to sell, they have to go through and remember that when they sell, they're selling knowing that, shit, I'm going to miss out on the next 4 months of those revenue distributions. Yeah. Do I really want to sell?
Yeah.
Do I really want to go now, or and it just puts that pause on them, and that's going to go through and be beneficial to the long-term holders and the long-term value of Illuvium, because people are always going to go through and say, hey, I know that there's money that's going to be paid out. I know that that's going to come through, and I know that there's some big sort of events coming up that are going to be, solid money generators. And if I jump out now and then jump back in there, and it's not going to make this massive impact. Like I can't jump out before the land sale and then jump back in straight after in the hope of getting those revenue distributions, because it's split over 6 months.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Yeah. That's fair. Awesome, man. Yo, that was actually a really good, thoughtful answer as well. So the last question that I want to ask, the last serious question, is what are your perspectives? I've seen like a lot of discussions about the fluctuating prices of fuel. So the playing the market essentially of 25% up, 25% down of the fuel. And that's obviously going to affect the price of actually just playing the overworld for the average gamer, for the average player. What are your thoughts on the decision to have that fluctuating price? Do you think it's a good idea? Do you reckon it should be pegged to, not even pegged, do you reckon it should be a stable price? Do you reckon it should be an open market but without the rails? Where do you stand on that topic?
It's funny because I was actually in the middle of the Discord during that discussion, and I agreed with everybody, which you're not allowed to do, right? You're not allowed to take both sides or all sides. And Blichter wrote something, and I'm like, that's a really good point. And then Ralord writes something, and I'm like, yeah, I completely agree with that. And then Aaron says something, and I'm like, yeah, exactly. And I'm like, shit, I just agreed to 3 different views. How's that possible?
Yeah.
But that's the thing, because I don't know if there is one perfect answer to it. Mm-hmm. I can see everybody's point of view, and I really like the idea of the fluctuation, giving that gamification to it. I love economy games, and any game that I do start to play, the first thing I end up doing is going and looking at the marketplace and watching that. Like, oh, let's go on a raid. No. I'm just going to sit here and watch the market for a couple of days. Just watch the price of silk go up and the price of gems go down, and you're like, oh yeah, I can, and it is enjoyable for some people. But yeah, it is frustrating for others. But the fluctuation goes through and creates depth of engagement and depth of strategy. Mm-hmm. So sometimes when you have a fixed price on something, it means that people go through and calculate the one direct route that will achieve something in the min-max.
Yeah.
And that's a fixed path because the price doesn't change.
Yeah.
But when you have fluctuation in price, and especially when we're talking like multiple different fuels here, and they can fluctuate, plus you're talking about the fluctuation of the Ethereum price, the fluctuation of Illuvium price, and therefore the SILV2, suddenly it becomes really complex, and there's no one direct path. One day you might be better off going through and buying fuel direct using your credit card through the on-ramp. Mm-hmm. And another day you might be better off going through and claiming some of your staking rewards as SILV2 and using those.
Yeah.
And then other days you might be better off just going through and trying to load up because it seems very cheap, in the minus 25%. And you're thinking, well, I know there's a tournament coming up, so I'm expecting that to swing the other way. And so you suddenly have all these different ways to interact with it and play with it, and you're not even talking about actually doing the game yet, and yet you're strategizing. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
okay, somebody might be in there kicking my ass in the ranked or in the Leviathan arena and such, and I'm like, that's okay, mate, because I'm going to kick your ass on the economy.
In the
I'm going to
market.
go and
Yeah,
buy
yeah,
this
yeah.
skill, right?
Yeah.
So I like the flexibility there, and I've been playing Steppen lately. Have you? Are you into the
I am
Steppen?
aware of Steppen, and I know a lot of people that in it. I've not yet looked into it myself, though.
Yeah. Well, it's ignoring all of the hype and all that sort of stuff. The thing that I've been watching is the pricing on it.
Yeah.
And the price fluctuates greatly. The price of the token, the price of the shoes, the price of the gems,
Yeah.
all of that sort of thing. It all fluctuates like very, very greatly. And yet people are still playing it. It
Yeah.
hasn't stopped anybody from buying in.
Yeah.
When you're talking shoes, you're talking the price of shoes might be 15 Sol. Well, what's the price of Solana? Well, it doesn't matter because the price of the 15 Sol that it costs is how much GST am I earning to then convert to the Solana to then go through and buy a new pair of shoes.
Yeah.
It's a cycle economy.
Yeah.
The only time that it matters is when I put the money in initially.
Yeah. 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 I think that's a really good comparison using Steppen as like, because that, like, again, the hype is there, everyone knows what it is, and like you're saying, like the fluctuations aren't stopping people getting involved. So I think that is a pretty good comparison to make. All right, man. So I want to just lead off to the final question I have today, and it's just a fun one to end it off. So we know that the land sale's coming up, like I mentioned before, and we know that there are two tier 5 lands being sold, and there are arenas on these lands. If you were able to get the naming rights for one of those arenas, what would you name it?
Um, Probably Dick King's Palace, just because I loved how his name jumped out initially, and then he's gone through and changed it to
To
Rich in
Rich. Yeah,
the
I still call him Dick. I can't stop calling him Dick.
yeah, I know, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I would have this massive billboard of his PFP up there, just like the mullet and
yeah.
the glasses, just for the shits and giggles. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I wouldn't want to call it something sensible,
Yeah.
like Achieve Arena or
Nah,
something
nah,
like
nah.
that. Nah,
You're honestly,
no.
your answer is my favorite so far. I've done 3 of these interviews. Your answer is my favorite.
Yeah. That scores me some points with him, so I get in on the beta. Hey,
Oh man, you're not in the beta yet? Yeah, definitely. Reach out to him,
no,
man.
not yet.
Reach out to him. See if you can
Yeah,
make something
yeah.
happen.
I'm working in back channels, so yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Let's see.
yeah.
Maybe by the time the election comes around, I might withdraw because I'm too busy playing the game.
Yeah, yeah, actually. All right, man. Yo, honestly, thank you so much for coming on. Before I let you go, is there anything else you kind of want to leave us with? Where should people follow you, hit you up? Twitter, Discord? Where's your favorite place to be interrupted?
So anybody can ping me at any time, like just in the Discord, at NewToItAll. But otherwise, Wolves DAO. If you're going to follow anybody, follow Wolves DAO
All right.
on Twitter, because they are a group of passionate, intelligent people who are just trying to go through and hopefully educate the Web3 space. Go through and say, hey, stop getting in on these shit coins, on these, rug projects and so forth, and start, educating yourself to ask something better. And basically anybody that's in Illuvium really should be anyway. They know what the bar is, they know what can be achieved. So why are people still buying into these shitty pixelated freaking staking games where all you do is just upload it to the web page and say, there you go, congratulations, you just played a game. Like, come on. So yeah.
Yeah.
WolfDAO is definitely where I'd say, keep an eye on them, follow them on Twitter.
All right, cool. Yeah, I'll put all the links down below in the description. But yeah, honestly, thank you again for coming on, man. I really actually enjoyed this. And
yeah, thanks also. It's great to talk with you. You're very charismatic.
oh, thanks, man. Yeah, that's super kind. But for anyone watching, again, thank you guys for keeping up with all of these interviews. I hope you guys are finding it insightful. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. You guys know what to do, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.